tell you, he was choking her.
You got your test in front of you there.
Nope.
And these guys, everybody knows, understands this right here. We got this 4x4 operation and overview. This is going to kind of burn things in that some of you may already know. There's no use in. You got a little graphic up there. You can see your rear axle, your rear drive shaft, your transfer case, your front drive shaft, your lock and hub, which is sometimes your lock and hub is. Make sure that thing ain't printing too many copies over there. It may be going crazy again.
Hey, Mr. Richard,
Cobb may have to reload those drivers. Is it printing the same thing again? Okay. Turn that printer off, and Cobb will have to come and work on that. I called him, and he said there's something wrong with that computer that's causing that problem. Just go ahead and prepare it all to print, and I'll get it printed. Okay. Sorry about that. Not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay. But anyway, all right. So. See this right here? We're looking at this right here would ordinarily be your handout, but we're kind of going to go over it together. Can you guys read that? All right. All the same components as a rear wheel drive line, transfer case, front drive shaft. You got that. Everybody knows that.
Yeah,
right?
All
right. Transfer case. Everybody knows what that looks like. It's connected. One of the worksheets I give you, and everybody really needs to go through it in here, is I give you a transfer case to tear apart and put back together.
I can do it.
So you'll understand where that stuff, how it all works in there. A transfer case has got something that surprises most people, that a transfer case has an oil pump in it. Yeah. So.
Well, it's got to.
Huh? Yeah, right. All right. There's your types of transfer cases. You got a part-time, you got an all-wheel drive. We talked a little bit about this. You got a part-time four-wheel drive, and then you got all-wheel drive, which basically the whole time you're driving the car, you're in four-wheel drive. And that makes it hug the road better. It's a whole lot better. Huh? It really does. It'll stick to the road like glue when you got that all-wheel drive thing. Depending on the system, part-time transfer systems may be manually shifted, electronically shifted, or automatically shifted into four-wheel drive. On the Ford Aerostar, they had an all-wheel drive Ford Aerostar that had a transfer case, a front drive shaft, everything it needed to go into four-wheel drive. But it wasn't in four-wheel drive. It was totally automatic. You couldn't tell it to go into four-wheel drive. It only went into four-wheel drive when it needed it. And it actually had speed sensors, mounted in places where it needed them, so that it could tell if your rear wheels were spinning, the transfer case would automatically lock in, and you'd start getting front, four-wheel drive. You get under it, you got a transfer case and all that, but you get in here and look around, you'll see no way to put it into four-wheel drive. Under the seat was a little computer that was about the size of a pack of cigarettes, and it had a bunch of little wires going to it, and that was automatic all-wheel drive, and it was a peculiar.
Can you make it all-wheel drive all the time?
It wasn't all-wheel drive when you was on hard pavement. If it was spinning, it would go in, but it would come back out of four-wheel drive when you didn't need it, And that was on that Ford Aerostar. That funny, they had some of them, not all of them. Yeah, it was a van, and not all of them had that, but anyway, and I worked on some of those. But anyway, as a matter of fact, if I remember right, we had a recall on some of them because the way they had that computer mounted under the seat, some of the wires and the seats got these would chafe into the wires, and we'd have to reroute some of the wires and stuff. It's operated in four-wheel drive mode only when commanded by the driver, or in the case of automatic four-wheel drive, which is what I was talking about, commanded by the generic electronic module. That's the newer ones. The one I was talking about didn't have the GEM module. It just had a little standalone. Now, there's your all-wheel drive transfer case. It's always in four-wheel drive mode and cannot be controlled by the driver. Always in four-wheel drive mode, cannot be controlled by the driver. The front drive line is always engaged. It uses a viscous coupling. And we've talked a little bit about a viscous coupling. What is a viscous coupling?
Similar clutches.
Well, actually, it's got some clutches vaguely similar to the automatic transmission clutches, but they're spinning in some jelly, so that there's a little slippage there all the time, but it's able to transmit torque. And that's what a viscous coupling is all about, and that kind of thing. So anyway, it's got no external controls. It's not controlled by anybody. It's always in four-wheel drive, all the time. And okay, now what you got right here? The front drive shaft. There's your U-joint. Now this right here, are these constant velocity joints?
No.
No, they're not. They actually, if you look at them, like any extension, like on your impact wrench or your drill or whatever, if you put it crooked, it goes woo, 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 woo. One time I had this boy helping me. I had this long extension that was a I got it from Harbor Freight or somewhere, but it was a 1/4 inch drive extension that was this long. And I actually fixed it so I could put it on my drill. I had a DeWalt drill, and I would put a 10 millimeter wiggle socket on the end of it. You know, not a wiggler with a 10 millimeter socket, but a 10 millimeter wiggle socket. And I was training a guy. You know, the guy that lost about $300 worth of my tools. His name was Adam something or other, and so he worked with me out there. And so he goes to take he saw me take his thermostats out of his Explorer, and I would take that long extension of that wiggler, and I would put it on them bolts. I go, and I've got this thermostat housing in my hand in about 30 seconds. And then whenever you're getting ready to put it back in, how do you put it back in? You take that, because see what happens is even though it's a steep, then you got a U-joint like this. That's what I'm saying is. And when you're spinning it, you can feel it going, you know, because the U-joint's going to get hard and easy and hard and easy and hard and easy. Just because it's just got a single way to bend, and it's going to go through them spells. It's not a constant velocity joint like one for an impact would be. Anyway, it worked good for me. I had no problem with that, and I used it for a long time like that. Well, the threads up in that thing up in that manifold were aluminum, and so when I would go down there and put them back in, and on some of the newer ones, they were like little brass inserts in plastic, you know. I would hold that thing down there, and I would start all three of them bolts with my fingers so they're almost completely tight, and then I would just tighten them the rest of the way with a ratchet. You know, you don't put them back in with this thing; you take them out with it, you know. And you be careful taking them out because of this constant velocity. I mean, this U-joint thing is liable to cause the bolt right before it comes out to wiggle a little bit and destroy the first thread. So you got to be careful with it. And I did that. Well, this knothead, not only did he pull them out with it, he tried to start the bolts and screw them back in with this thing and wiped out the threads on 2 of the holes. You know, cost me much extra work. You know, you ever seen somebody? You ever been in a situation? And sooner or later, some of you guys are going to be supervising younger guys. And the younger guys are going to totally destroy something, and they come to you and want you to work a miracle. You ever had anything like that? You ever do anything like that? But all right. So you got a cardan, a front single cardan U-joint, a rear single cardan U-joint, or a double cardan U-joint, which is getting closer to a CV joint. You know, cardans that cross U-joint. Now look at that. Here's your front drive axle. Now you got answers to your questions are coming up here, right? Got it? Okay.
1 and 2 is true.
Yeah. Okay, so you got your operates the same as rear wheel drive, front wheel drive does. Directs power flow through the axle shaft to both front wheels when the system's in 4-wheel drive mode, and it uses universal joints and steering knuckles to allow the axle to, you know, transmit power and turn at the same time. Here's a story. The guy's got a 4-wheel drive International Scout. I'm working at the International dealership, or we're in Enterprise. And the guy that owns, they used to own the Big Little stores. You know, I went to school with this guy's dad. You know, with this guy, his dad owned Big Little stores. He had this International Scout, and it was the carrier in the differential broke in half. It broke half in two, and so that let the gears and everything all around. He said, the differential in my Scout is making horrible noises. And so I pulled the cover off of it.
Would it still pull?
Huh?
Would it still pull with it broke like
Yeah,
that?
but it was broken irregularly. You see, so it was still it was foul. It was still pull. You had catch and pull. So anyway, he brings it in, and so I raise it up, and I said, how much did you, or it may have come in on the hook. But anyway, I says, I'm going to pull the cover off the back of it, And I said, how far did you drive this thing, Bert? Because I knew the guy ever since high school. Oh, no, I didn't drive it. As soon as it started making noise, I quit driving it. Well, if he drove it very far, he would have mismatched the gears. And if you do that, it's going to be noisy. But you can't ever look at those gears. I've told you this before. You can't look at the gears and tell if they're going to be noisy or not, just looking at them. And so I pulled the thing apart, and I said, well, based on the fact that you didn't drive it very far, I'm just going to replace the carrier. And the carrier was like $300. So we got a carrier for it, and we put it in there, and I put it all back together, and I set the gears up. You paint them like you're painting your porch, and you turn them through, and you're going to set your backlash and, gear pattern and all that stuff. And I'm going to show you guys something about how to do that when we get out here in the shop. Of course, you'll miss it because you're working over there.
We're done it.
Okay.
Me and you did it.
Me and you did it. Yeah, we can do it. But anyway, I got one set up where we're ready to do it, right? But one way or another, the thing, when I put it back together, it's noisy. Gears singing. I said, he's going to squawk about that. And so the boss man says, I've got a rear end sitting down here behind the shop that has got a differential, a set of a ring gear and a pinion, I believe it's the same gear ratio as what you're working with. Now, on a four-wheel drive, the front and the rear's got to have the same gear ratio. You can't have bigger tires on the front or the back. You got to have the same everything all the way around. So I go down there, and I find this axle he's pointing out down there, and it's been sitting out in the rain for years, and the whole darn thing's full of water. And so I poured the water out of it, and boy, it was all pitted with rust and all. Everything's horrible. I said, Richard, I can't use this. That's the boss man's name. I can't use this. This is ridiculous. I said, well, let's put them in there and see what they do. Well, I was on salary, so why not? I was on commission. So I took the ring gear and pinion out of that dadgum thing, and when I put it back in there, set it up just like I would just like I knew what I was doing, and when I set that darn thing up, it was funny. It was so quiet. Couldn't even tell there was a rear end back there. And they had old rusty pitted gear. They weren't polished like you wanted to be, but there's a lot of place for oil to be. You see what I mean?
Oh, okay.
And because of the rust, that's what it did. But anyway, there you go. We got pictures right there. If I can make this a primary window. That's how it goes apart. Huh?
When are you going to take us over there and show us how to do it?
We've got that. That one on the bench over there. It's made to put on that transmission jig. And I got the special tools and everything to show you how to set up a rear end. And we're going to go through that so that you'll know how to do it. And that's basically part of what you're going to learn in driving. I've actually got a video on YouTube about it.
I've seen.
Yeah.
We've seen it on this computer.
Yeah, you can actually see, and that's what we're going to carry you through. We'll put your hands on the stuff and show you how to determine which tools to use and all that. I did put some hayseed music in there that probably shouldn't have been there. But some of the people that watch on YouTube complain about that. Axle shaft, we got right there. We got axle shaft, axle housing, shift lever, cover, vacuum actuator, motor. Now I'm going to tell you another differential story. You know the difference between a floating axle and like on a 1 ton or a ton and a half. Like a 1 ton truck or a 3/4 ton truck, and what we have like on our little Ranger or the GMC or something. You know what a floating axle is. You ever heard of a floating axle? All right, the difference.
Hold on. Floating axle.
Yeah.
Are you talking like? You're talking like an axle, solid axle, right?
Huh?
Talking solid axle?
Yeah. Well,
Or are you talking with one with CV axle?
Not CV axle, solid axle. Yeah. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna show you guys.
Like a Mustang.
Let me grab
Mustang's
my
got
marker.
floating. Got a floating rear end. Because the shocks sit on top of the rear end.
Oh, all right, I got you. The shocks in the rear.
I think so, and the ones with the these springs. Mr. Richard, isn't those a floating rear end one with got springs on it that hold it?
Well, not really. You're kind of going in the.
I'm talking like a Mustang.
No, a Mustang's never on any planet ever had a floating axle.
Okay.
Okay, now what we got here is ordinarily you got an axle coming out here, and it's got a little place where bearings ride, and then you go on out and you got your hub where your tire hook's on, right? And there's a bearing right here, and that's all in the axle housing, right? Okay, what's carrying the weight of that vehicle?
Bearings?
And the axle, right? This axle that actually is driving the car down the road is carrying the weight of the vehicle. This is this flange. You got brake drum and all this nonsense on here, but this flange right here, where your tire bolts on there, it's got lug nuts coming out. The weight of the vehicle is being carried by that.
I thought what it is to break the axle.
I think they're done. They come outside. Boom!
Yeah.
Outside the road.
Yeah, they do that sometimes. If they come loose on the inside, and you can see. All right, now watch this. What if we wanted something to be stronger than that? We don't want the axle that's driving the vehicle down the road to carry the weight of the vehicle.
So why does people put like different rear ends on their trucks? Like bigger rear ends, different ratio of rear ends?
I don't understand the question.
Like on a big truck, why would they put like a different rear end in it?
I'm getting ready to explain that right now. All right, watch it. Okay, now then, what we're going to do here is we're going to put a tube, and we're going to put a bearing here. Well, I'm going to go on out with that tube, and I'm going to put a bearing there. Big old bearings. Like I do it with rollers in them, roller bearings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to put my wheel hub riding on that. That's carrying the weight of the vehicle. All right. Out here, though, what is it? It's going to drive this thing that's riding on here. Is you're going to have the axle bolted to this thing that's turning on these bearings, and going through the center of this tube, we're going in here to our rear end. Now this axle is not holding the weight of the vehicle. What's holding the weight of the vehicle is the outside of the axle tube.
Mm-hmm.
That's a floating axle. This axle right here is not carrying any weight.
Okay, so they're calling the axle that's inside the tube.
The actual axle is driving a vehicle is floating.
Okay, I got
See
you.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not sitting on bearing. That axle has never seen a bearing.
Right, I got
The
you.
bearings are on the outside of the axle too. And you're going to see that on that the big 1-ton vans that we have that we do vehicle inspections on, and the one with the dual wheels. You know how if you look at the thing, it's got this thing sticking out here, and it's got bolts around it, right? And then it goes in like that, and then your wheel is in here, right?
Yeah.
You remember what I'm talking about?
I know what's
Okay, now what that is, when you got it like that, what you're looking at that's got them bolts going through it is the end of that axle. And on those, you can take all these bolts out and pull that axle out without even jacking the truck up. Because the axle's not holding any weight. You can. Now sometimes they'll have them silly little cone-shaped split washer things in there, in every hole that's aggravating.
we done that on the Blazer. We took the little axles off and new stuff.
Yeah. Except the axles weren't on the Blazer weren't hooked up like this. You know what I'm saying? You can pull the axle out. But remember now, the bearing is actually riding on the axle itself, and the axle carrying the weight of the car on the smaller vehicles. They could not make it work like that on the big ones because they want to be able to carry more weight. And so that's how it works. Now, here's the deal. When you pull this off right here, you're going to see the bearings and all are in here. And there's a nut that's kind of a big nut like this. And there's two of them with a flat washer in between them. And you tighten the first one up to where you get the proper preload on those bearings. And then you put a washer in there that's got a notch in it so that it can't turn. And then you bend the tab over. When you put your second nut on, you bend the tab over so there's no way the nut can come loose. Well, there was a 78 1-ton Ford pickup I was working on when I was down in Southeast Texas in 1978. And there was this nut popped. It broke. Now these threads are really fine on the outside. Exactly. That nut's only about a 1/2 inch thick. It's a big nut. It's this big around, but it's only about a 1/2 inch thick. So it broke. And what happened here was because it broke, now all of a sudden the wheel is starting to come out a little bit, and this axle is starting to do this. And it broke that axle. It broke that axle about right that far in, and big chunks of metal from that broken axle swelled this stupid tube.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. We had that this weekend.
That is an absolute pain.
You can just take the axle and just wiggle it back and forth.
Yeah.
Makes clean.
Yeah, and so what we did was... Now, wait a minute. I've destroyed the differential housing now, the whole thing. So now we got to have another one. There ain't no way you can fix that. Hey, thank you, Timmy.
And there's the key.
Okay, so you've destroyed the differential housing. Now I've got to get another housing. I called the Ford people, and it was nearly $1,000 for a replacement axle housing. We're in Powertrain Fundamental Test 7, by the way, Sean. But, okay, so basically we've got a situation here where I had to get that. So what did I have to do that? I get one that's just a hull that's got no differential in it. Like for $200, it was used. Right? Bought one that was just exactly like what came off the truck. Everything was fine. The threads on the outside were good. It was just an empty hull of an axle housing. I said, I can use my cover and all this kind of stuff. So I take the differential and all that stuff out of this, and I put it in the new housing that I got. It was $200 used. And had it up on some sawhorses there. I mean, not sawhorses, but jack stands, up on the bench working on it. And when I put it in there, I could not adjust it far enough so that the ring gear was far enough away from the engine that it wouldn't lock up. And I'm talking about it was just too close. The tolerances were wrong, but everything else was fine, And this thing right here where the ring gear bolted, the carrier, where the ring gear bolts on here? This carrier, you got this carrier that the ring gear is actually bolted to. And here's your big old ugly ring gear.
Kinda
And the
like-
carrier is bolted to that. It's got bolts coming in from behind, and that's how that works. Now,
Is that like the one? I'm sorry, but is that like the one me and you worked on?
yeah, exactly like it's made the same way.
Okay.
All right, so what I did was we happened to be in a situation down there in that shop where I was, where we had a lathe, a big fine lathe. And so I took it to the guy that was running the lathe over there. I took this carrier, I took that gear off at carrier, and I did some measurements, and I said, I need you to take 125 thousandths of an inch off of the gear side of this. Now, this guy understood cars and stuff because he had done a lot of his own work. He's an old, foul-mouthed old man, you know. His name was D.D. Crane, but I really liked the guy, you know. But anyway, he was a good machinist, and he cut 125 thousandths off that thing, and it was absolutely perfect. I put it back in, set that rear end up, we're good to go. Now, if I hadn't had him right over with that lathe, that job would have been a whole lot harder, you know. I mean, because I'd have had to do something, whatever. And I figured since he's right over there, if it's, you know, if it was too much, I could just add more shims on the other side and bring it closer. If it wasn't enough, I could have him cut off some more. But 125 thousandths wound up being perfect. And it was just an eighth of an inch. 125 thousandths, just an eighth of an inch. Anyway, that was a booger bear of a job there, you know. And but occasionally you just got to think outside the box, you know. And all right, now then, right here. Come on down here. Look at this. You got an automatic hub and you got a manual hub. We got manual hubs on our big Bronco out there. I've got a $100 special tool out there for pulling off these, like on these later model Rangers. We had to do a job where we had to put brake rotors on a Ranger, and they actually have these 6 little fingers you got to put into that hub so you can pop that thing off. It don't take a lot of pressure to pop it off, but those little fingers, all 6 of them, got to hold it at the same time. I can show you a picture of that later. Now, you got a vacuum hub too. See, the vacuum hub actually does this they want to try to do it automatically. And you don't want to. Do you know how they basically make that engagement? How do they engage the ones? Like you see some of them that don't have any kind of a locking hub out here. The locking's done on the inside. You know how they do that? There's a sleeve, the spline sleeve. It's got a shift fork on it. And whenever that spline sleeve is back to where it's on this inside stub, the inside stub's turning, but the outside wheels aren't if you've got it in 4-wheel drive. When it locks the hubs, it moves that spline sleeve out to where it's locked on the rear axle. In other words, that way, this far inboard, they're actually locking the hubs. See what I'm saying? And that's the Chevrolet likes to do it that way. It's really not a bad thing. And Jeep used to do it that way a long time ago. You know the stuff. They weren't lying when they said Jeep was the book on 4-wheel drive. You know. All right. Let's see. Manual, automatic, and vacuum. You got all of them. We don't have a whole lot more to go. We've only got. We're on page 13 of 34.
That's a lot now.
Yeah, GEM is generic electronic module. See that? You got 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel high, 4-wheel low, blah, blah, blah. Remember what I told you about the one that this guy had that transmission that was shifting out too soon? You remember that story? Because the 4-wheel low light was burned out.
I know it was in 4-wheel low?
No, the 4-wheel low light was burned out. And the computer thought it was in 4-wheel low all the time, and so it was going through all of its gears, and by the time he was hitting 20 miles an hour, he'd already in high gear.
Dang.
And he rebuilt the transmission.
And he rebuilt it.
Yeah, I think I drew this picture one time before, but it's cool if you guys hadn't seen it. Well, he worked on it during things for about several days. Well, he worked on it for several days, and he's over there and he's killing himself. He goes, man, this thing goes into the highest gear by the time it's hitting 20 miles an hour. And I rebuilt it and everything, and I put it back together just like it was. You know? And I said, well, let's talk about this for a minute. So I'll go over there, and just in the course of things, I got in the truck and I turned on the key, and I noticed that none of these instrument cluster lights that are usually coming on, that are warning lights, were coming on. And I said, why are these warning lights coming on, Kevin? He said, I don't know about that. I don't care about that. I'm just working on the transmission. I said, well, think about it now. You got, watch this. Look at this. I want to draw this real simple. You got a bulb, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now watch this. Going over here to your transfer case, you have a switch. When I put this thing in 4-wheel low, that switch closes, the bulb comes on. All right, look at this. What's right here? PCM. PCM's seeing 12 volts here when that switch is open.
Oh, all right, I see.
So you got 12 volts coming through the bulb, and the PCM doesn't care how much amperage is there, it just wants to see voltage. You close that switch, the 12 volts goes away, the light comes on. This one here, it wasn't a blown bulb. It was actually a fuse somebody had pulled out, and it had killed this power. So somebody had pulled that fuse.
That makes sense.
They pull the fuse. It lost that. The PCM says we're in 4-wheel low, so I'm just going to.
Okay, so hold on now.
Yeah.
The PCM needs to see 12 volts to be in 4 low, right?
No, if it sees 12 volts, it knows you're not.
Oh, okay.
Because it's getting it through the bulb and it's not grounded.
Okay.
So, you see, it didn't know if this was grounded or what, but it just knows if I don't see 12 volts, I'm going to go in 4-wheel low shift set schedule because it was an electronic transmission.
Okay, I got you.
And he felt like he had been body slammed 2 or 3 times. Now I don't know who paid the bill or whatever, but the fact is, it may have been a warranty repair, but it was a F series, like a F250 or something.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, it would smack you around, man. I ain't kidding. I'm not throwing off on him, but I mean, if you're thinking, you need to get back off sometimes and think. But if you just get real excited and you dive in there and start jerking stuff apart, next thing you know, you've done a whole zillion hours worth of work you didn't need to do. You know, somebody's got to get paid for that stuff. You know, when I went to El Paso, Texas, to teach the border patrol mechanics out there was a Chevrolet dealership that they had an ABS light that was on one of their Suburbans. You know, the Border Patrol uses Suburbans. Mm-hmm. And so the guy that was the boss over the Border Patrol mechanics out there was telling me between one of the breaks, he said, I just had to pay the Chevrolet dealership, or whoever it was, some dealership or whatever, $1,700 because one of my guys did install some equipment on one of our Suburbans and they left a fuse out. And I said, pardon me? He says, yeah. He says, they worked on that thing trying to troubleshoot it for about 3 days, and when they finally found the problem, one of my people had pulled a fuse out of it, or just forgot to put one back in, or maybe had blown a fuse or whatever. And he says, so they charged us $1,700. Well, what's wrong with that picture? See, you don't owe them $1,700. I mean, it's government money, and I understand that, but you don't owe them $1,700. You know why you don't owe them? They should have checked the fuse first.
That's true.
You see what I'm saying? They went around Robin Hood's barn, and then they tried to turn it back like it was his fault. And if GM ain't going to pay them $1,700 to replace a fuse, they're smarter than that. See what I'm saying? And so he just handed the Border Patrol guy a bill. Your guys messed this up. Well, instead of the mechanic was doing like he's supposed to, he would have just put a fuse in it, and they would have charged him no charge or whatever. Or maybe minimum, even a 1 hour charge would have been better than $1,700. That's ridiculous, you know. Now, I don't know. I think he probably went ahead and paid the bill, but he was trying to give his mechanics a hard time. There's 25 of them guys in there. You guys messed up and cost me $1,700. I don't think so. They may have, but you're getting the shaft put to you by the Chevrolet place over there, whoever it is, you know. And I don't know what the name of the dealer was. If they see this on YouTube, they may be on my fanny about it, you know. But that was a true story. I'm not going to tell you what year it was. I only remember for sure, but it was a while back. But, anyway, so just remember this: that if you do the wrong, if you make a bad diagnosis, and it costs you a whole bunch of extra work, you know, I understand that you got to buy groceries. We all do, but let's try to be careful so that we don't make things hard on ourselves, because you can make a bunch of legitimate dollars by fixing stuff that's really broke, instead of spending 3 days checking something that should have checked the fuse to start with. You see, he should have checked the fuse, because the first thing I'm going to do is turn it on and see everything that don't work, and then I'm going to analyze it and say, can this have anything to do with my problem? You know, let's think about this a little bit instead of just flying in there.
That's great.
Of course, that guy works for the phone company now, and I think that's the reason for it. So, but anyway, let me see here. I like the guy. Don't get me wrong. Now he did make my wife mad one time, because her car wouldn't shift. It was a brand new Tempo. I know it was a '93 Tempo, and brand new. And of course, my wife doesn't like you go through me. She feels like I want to be like a regular customer, but it's going to take my Tempo in there, and I'm going to work on it because it won't shift. In the morning, you take off, it wouldn't shift out of low gear unless you really slap the gas, and then it would. Well, the shift linkage is really straight whenever it's got high oil pressure. You see it breaks down like that. Mm-hmm. And when it's really straight like that, it's hard for it to get enough leverage to move it when the oil's cold. And so Ford had a fix for that. And so this same guy worked on it, pulled the valve body off, did some stuff, changed some springs in there, something that Ford wanted done that I thought might fix it. All right, and then she takes the car back home, and the next time it's a cold day, Kevin goes walking up there, and the service writer says, so he's got the phone like this. And she says, my transmission is not shifting again this morning. And so he takes the phone and he puts it like this, and he says, Kevin, Richard's wife says her transmission is not shifting still. And Kevin says, I don't give a, And she heard that crap. Bad idea. All right, so now she's not so terribly high strung, but I'm gonna tell you, she's like this. Robert, when he gets the phone back to his ear, he's like this, and she's really giving him what for. So he comes and hands the phone to me, and she gives me a rundown on what happened. So I guess, golly. And so the service manager came walking by, and I handed him the phone. And he's, everybody's getting it. It's coming down on everybody because of this. And so, anyway, Kevin gets called in on the carpet. And so Kevin writes a letter of apology on a little sticky note, said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything. And so, anyway, but I told her, I said, look, sometimes when somebody drives away from your bank window, do you ever say anything that might have made them mad if they heard you say it? Well, yeah. Well, it just so happened that he didn't turn off the microphone. Maybe you got to give the guy a break. He was saying that to the service right. He wasn't saying it to you. You didn't need to get mad about that. Well, by the time you're mad, it's too late. You know what I'm saying? When you get mad, sometimes you just go off. But anyway, you got to be doggone careful what you say around a customer, because they will really start combing your ears down. And people that are spending a lot of money buying the car and having it fixed, they have some clout with the boss man, believe it or not. And I've known of people that got fired because of things they said. We're doing a good job, but they say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time and get fired for it. Yeah. Even though they're doing good work. So watch your mouth. You know what I mean? Just watch your mouth. All right. Boy, how did I ever get that sidetracked on that? Okay, some vehicles use a 3-position switch to control the system operation, 4-position, and they're vehicle dependent. You got two-wheel, 4-wheel auto, 4-wheel low. So you got different ones. That's not rocket science. The 2-wheel drive position is used only on some vehicles. It can be switched to 2-wheel at any speed, except when the vehicle is in the 4-wheel low position. Now, you're going to have to put it in neutral, put it 4-wheel low. Yeah, that's just the way that is. You don't want all that stuff trying to spool up and clank together when you're driving along, at high speed. You talk about busting something out from under there. A vehicle with automatic 4-wheel drive can be switched at any vehicle speed, except when the vehicle's in the 4-wheel low position. Now, remember the one I told you about on that Aerostar was just totally automatic, and you didn't have no
auto 4-wheel drive stinks.
You like that pretty good? Would you like to have automatic 4-wheel drive on your Ford Escort and all that kind of stuff?
When you turn it, it's a plump.
All right, so. All right, now then, the position off-road, extreme winter weather, so on and forth. How many? Are you seeing answers to your questions here?
Nope.
You're not looking? All right.
We don't listen.
All right. You're not looking?
No,
all right.
Listen.
Number 3, number 4, true.
You got to be stopped. Brake pedal's got to be depressed. Ooh, listen to that. If you've got the electronic, the jump module doing it, it's got a bunch of criteria that has to be met before you can switch it. See, so clutch pedal's got to be depressed if it's a manual transmission, and that's only for off-road. If you put it in that mode on just dry or just wet pavement, you're going to get driveline wind up, and everybody knows what that is.
Yep.
I got in a Bronco one day to back it out of my service bay at the Ford place, and it just kind of slowed down and stopped on me. Yeah. When I said, I'm wound up the driveline here. How can I 4-wheel drive? What you did this. So I pulled it back up and it unwound it, and I put it back in. You got the viscous coupling. See the viscous coupling? Look, see where it is, guys? There's an arrow pointing to the viscous.
Sealed?
Huh?
Is it a sealed coupling?
Pretty doggone sealed.
Sealed.
Yeah.
Sealed.
It's not electronically controlled.
Does it have 85% alcohol basically?
Let's talk about it. All right. There's your viscous coupling cutaway view. See the clutches?
No, that's false.
Right there.
Taking the name wrong.
Huh? That's it. We're going to zoom in on it. Now you can see it, can't you? Huh? See that? Yeah, we zoom all in. All right. All right, look at that. Now watch. Look, read those right there. They're coated with ferric nitrocarburized coating. One set of the disc is connected to the coupling housing, the other set's connected to the internal hub. That reminds you of an automatic transmission, don't it? What? Real similar. Or a motorcycle clutch.
Yeah, no, I see that.
The viscous coupling housing. Did you say that was a seal unit? That's what it says right there, isn't it?
Yeah, I got it. I don't figure out the question.
Look at this. Silicone and air. 85-15. 85% silicone, 15% air. That's what's in there. Located in close proximity to each other. What's proximity mean?
Distance.
That means that they're close to each other, right? All right. The rotation of the housing is transmitted to the hub by the action of the fluid because, see, it kind of resists the shear of these plates. You got it? That's it. Archie's yawning. I put him to sleep. All right. The fluid heats up and expands in the housing, and as it expands, now hear this, it forces the air contained in the housing to be pressed tightly against the hub plates and rotate at the same speed as the drive plate. So the more the fluid heats up, the more solid the connection is. Everybody understand that now? You got that? The more the fluid heats up, the tighter it gets. That allows torque to be transferred efficiently between the drive and driven plates without direct contact. There's that stuff between them, you see. And that's what it looks like. There's you got this right here. You got transfer case components. There's your clutch pack of your cam coil housing assembly, which is a different kind of hookup there. So you got clutch plates on that too. On compact vehicles, cam coil housing assembly is active in all positions except two-wheel drive. It allows torque to be transferred as needed to meet driving conditions. It's GEM controlled, so the GEM kicks that one in. See what I mean? It doesn't have a viscous coupling.
Hey, Mr. Richard.
Yeah.
How hard is it to rebuild a transfer?
It's not so terribly bad. You'd be surprised how easy it is. It's a lot easier than a transmission. It's a lot easier than a transmission. Hello? Yeah. Hey, Far. How you doing? Just bring them on. I ain't hard to get along with. You know I'm all right with that. Yeah. Don't you worry about it. It's not a problem at all. You just bring them on. We'll handle them. Yes, sir. He's bringing 2 more observers.
Observers?
Yeah, this is the guy from the Skills USA competition. Yeah, they're gonna go over there and watch you work at the shop. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. No, not really. They're gonna watch us do this competition. At the heart of all-wheel drive transfer case, your clutch pack and coil housing. So we got that right. Now then, right here, the clutch hub spline is the rear output shaft. All right. What's the rear output shaft? It goes to what? What does the rear output shaft turn?
Drive shaft.
The drive shaft. There you go. It's splined internally to the splined clutch discs. Full-size vehicles use 6 internally splined discs. Mid-size use 5 internally splined discs. Rotates at rear output shaft speed. Now, why didn't they make them all just alike? Why didn't they make them all a little heavier than they needed to be and just use the same thing on everything, right? I guess they saved money. Putting 1 less disc in there saves a little bit of money, don't you? Okay, full-size vehicles use 7. That's the clutch housing. You got, all right, now you see there's your D. There you are. See, D, C, A, E, G, J. And then you got F, H, I, K, B. Got all that memorized? All right, let's move down to the next page. Right. All right, there's your drive sprocket is D. Full-size vehicles use 7 externally splined clutch discs. Mid-size use 6. And it rotates their front output speed, so on and so on. You get where we're going here with that.
Right.
1998 newer, the clutch coil duty cycle. This is like an air conditioner clutch. You understand that? An air conditioner clutch is in here. It's got that type of clutch.
Same thing?
Yeah, it's real similar. Very, very similar. Electromagnetic. The clutch coil magnetically pulls the armature against the cam coil housing. Since the armature is splined to the clutch housing, it's turning at front output shaft speed. Therefore, the cam coil housing assembly starts to turn at the same speed. So that's basically shift on the fly.
Yeah.
Basically, what you're doing is you push your shift on the fly, and it clicks in, bloop, spins it up, and you're going.
That's 4-wheel drive high.
Yes, not 4-wheel drive low.
No, you're an idiot.
By squeezing the clutch pack together, the clutch hub is linked to the clutch housing.
You ever done it?
Okay, guys, we're burning daylight. We got very few pages left. Look at this. Your transfer case uses a shift motor to shift cam assembly. See that thing right there? Does this cam assembly look confusing? You're going to be able to get your hand on one of those.
I want to do it.
You will. You will. And it's in a blazer. All right. Not really.
You should have seen it.
Yeah. It didn't take you long to look over
He
it.
changed his mind.
It's not really a
I'll
blazer.
stick with someone else.
Yeah. Okay, shift cam assembly is not repairable, and you got to replace it to the assembly. That's B. See that? You got to get that whole thing as an assembly if you need it. You got all them parts to it, right? All right. Now then, there you go. Transfer case got a high efficiency chain drive. Provides power transfer to the front output shaft. You know, some of your front wheel drive transmissions have got a chain like that. Driven by a drive sprocket on the rear output shaft and driven sprocket on the front output shaft. That's a bunch of words, okay? Transfer case uses a simple planetary gear set for torque multiplication in four-wheel drive low. And we all understand how a planetary gear set multiplies torque, don't we?
Yes.
You learned that last semester in automatic transmission. The sun gear turns the planetary pinion gears. Well, excuse me, the gear set uses the sun gear as the input and the planet carrier assembly as the output. So the sun gear is this part right here. That's D. The planet carrier is this one here. It's got 10 little gears in it. And, you got a... well, excuse me, I'm sorry. There's a sun gear. This is a ring gear here. All right, so this is driving and this is being driven, right, by way of these little gears that are walking on those.
That's what it looks like on the inside of the transfer case?
It's a transfer case. It's got that in there.
Oh,
The ring gear is held by the case and will not turn. Therefore, the whole carrier assembly rotates at a reduction. So, in four-wheel drive low, the reduction hub joins the carrier assembly to the output shaft. In all other positions, the reduction hub joins the sun gear to the output shaft. You'll see that when you take one of those apart.
That's pretty cool.
Full-size transfer case uses lock-up collar assembly to mechanically lock the rear output shaft to the drive sprocket, and a lock-up collar is not applied in two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. There's your oil pump. Transfer case uses a gerotor pump for lubrication. It's a real thin little thing, but it's got a pump oil in there. And you'll see that too. Driven by the rear output shaft, retained to the case by a tab on the pump housing. It's not repairable. It's replaced in the assembly. And put the oil pump in there if you need it. We had this training program that had like little pictures of stuff going on, and when I was going through that thing, I was confused about what they wanted me to do. And there was this little weaselly little guy they had pulling the transmission out. They showed him pulling the transmission out. And what are you going to do next? I'm going to pull the transmission out. And what are you going to do? I'm going to take this apart. What are you going to inspect? I'm going to inspect this and this. I kept missing the oil pump for some reason or another, in my little inspection thing on here. And I worked that guy on that thing off, I had him pull the transmission out several times. He'd pull it out, he'd put it in. He never complained, though. He always had the same look on his face when he's pulling it out and putting it in. But I guess that was probably a video that they played over and over. All right, hub, shaft, input, rear reduction hub. There you go. See how that's split? You got a clamshell there. See how all that goes together? Remember that, Archie. You're going to need it to put this back together.
And the friction how, or is it rebuilt for it on Crown Vic?
The front end on a Crown Vic is the easiest one in the whole planet.
Okay.
If it's one of these newer ones.
Yeah,
oh, man, the upper ball joints are just a song.
Yeah,
you won't believe how easy they are. Just make sure that you mark those eccentrics when you're pulling them apart and put them right back where they were, and you probably won't even have to make many alignment adjustments.
You need an alignment anyway.
Yeah. So, you'll be way off if you don't put them back where they were.
Alignment, I can do an alignment in about 15 minutes.
On one of those, they're easy as dirt.
Yes.
Need nothing to them. The lower ball joint is, like what you're used to. You're going to see that. But you'll be surprised how easy it is to put them upper ones are just duck soup.
I got to take the A-frame bushings out.
No.
Yeah, I do. I got to replace
them. The bottom ones, you mean?
No, the top one. It's all they're all
messed up. Yeah. Well, now, what year is this car?
I don't know. I think it's a 96.
96. Okay. Well, let me know how that works out for you, but it won't be bad. You'll be all right with that. Now, if it is bad, it will be because you're a second-rate amateur. You'll just have to play.
No, I never did another Dodge.
Yeah, the Dodge was a tough one, wasn't
it? That Dodge.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't hard. It was just.
Yeah. It was an 8-hour flag. You did it. It was an 8-hour flag. You did it in 6 hours. Yeah. You'd have to beat the tar.
It wasn't that bad. It was beating. My chest feels it. Slinging a 4-pound hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you didn't get tired after a while, but it's okay. You got a lot of energy. All right, and there you go. We got you some automatic four-wheel drive power flow. Look how it goes. Can you see it? 1, it goes into the input shaft sun gear. 2, goes to the reduction hub. 3, goes to the rear output shaft. See where it's headed? All right, that's right there. And then you got clutch pack assembly, drive sprocket, drive chain, driven sprocket, and front output shaft.
Got to be compact.
Huh? It says stuffed in there pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, powered rear drive line. Put it in gear, torque transmitted to the transfer case output shaft and the transmission output shaft. Reduction hub connects the input shaft, rear output shaft, so on and so forth. You can see how that works. All right, and there's your, look, 4-wheel high power flow, and it's giving us those and all that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have this stuff on that computer over there when you guys get ready to do your final exam, so if you need to look up any of these.
How am I going to do my final exam?
You'll just have to take a few days off work.
Okay.
And but make sure you keep up with the work that you're doing over there at your shop, too.
I got a book of it. Wrote down.
All right. So
first thing that Michael made me get was a log book.
Yeah, you make that happen. All right, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to whip through these questions so we can make sure everybody's got the answer.